His phone was always face down, always on silent, always buzzing late at night. One evening, I playfully grabbed it and saw a message from a name I didn't recognize. "I miss talking to you." Does she suspect anything? My blood ran cold. I waited until dinner and casually asked, "Would you ever cheat on me?" He scoffed, "Never." I smiled, took a sip of my wine, and slid his phone across the table. "Good," I whispered, "because she seems to think you already are." His face turned pale as he read the message, and that's when I knew he had something to hide. 42 female, never thought I'd be writing here. I always thought cheating stories happened to other people. People who didn't pay attention, who didn't care, who ignored the signs. I saw the signs. I just didn't want to believe them. Let me start by saying I thought my marriage was solid. Not perfect, but solid. We've been married 14 years, together for 17. We live in a suburb just outside Nashville. We've got 2 kids. A decent house. A golden retriever who sheds everywhere. Regular stuff. Nothing fancy, nothing broken. Or so I thought. My husband, 44 male, is Adam. Works in tech. VP of some health software company. Always busy. But that's never been a problem. He's always been like that. Ambitious. I liked that about him. But over the last year, something shifted. It started small. Little things. Things I could ignore at first. His phone. It was always face down. Every time. On the kitchen counter. On the nightstand. On the coffee table. Always face down. I asked him once, jokingly, why he does that. He laughed and said, "It's just a habit. I don't like being distracted." Okay, reasonable. But then I noticed it was also always on silent. No sounds. No buzzes. No alerts. And still, somehow, it would light up. A lot. Especially at night. Midnight. 1 a.m. 2:13 a.m. The screen would glow. He'd glance at it. Sometimes he'd grab it and walk out of the room. "Just a work thing," he'd say. I let it go. I didn't want to be that wife. The suspicious one. But something kept tugging at me. He started getting more protective of it. If I reached for his phone to move it off a pile of laundry or to check the time, he'd stiffen up. Not angry, just tense. Then he'd casually take it from me and put it somewhere else. Every single time. I kept noticing more. He'd start replying to texts in the bathroom. I'd walk by the door, and I could hear the tapping of the screen. Then silence when I paused outside. A few seconds later, the toilet would flush. No one flushes after they're done texting. You get what I mean? And the phone buzzes. Late. So late. Always after I'd gone to bed. I started pretending to be asleep. Just to see what he'd do. One night around 12:30 a.m., I heard it buzz on the dresser. Then I heard him carefully, quietly, get out of bed. He took the phone and tiptoed downstairs. Didn't come back for 45 minutes. He thought I was asleep. He didn't know I heard everything. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We've got 2 kids. A life. I didn't want to break it all over a gut feeling. So I let it sit. I told myself maybe he's stressed. Maybe he's dealing with work crap he doesn't want to bring home. Then one night, something snapped. We were sitting in the living room, watching some show on Netflix. He was scrolling through his iPad. His phone was face down on the ottoman. It buzzed twice. He didn't flinch. So I reached over and grabbed it. Laughing, "Is it your boss again? Tell him to give you a break." His reaction was immediate. He reached for it fast. Way too fast. Not in a playful way. In a panicked way. But I already had it flipped over in my hand. And that's when I saw it. A message preview from someone named Ray. "I miss talking to you. Does she suspect anything?" My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. My face burned. I couldn't breathe right. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the screen. He grabbed it out of my hand and tried to laugh. "It's nothing. Just someone from work joking around." I didn't say a word. I stood up, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I knew. He didn't even try that hard to cover it up. When I came back out, he was acting like nothing happened. Changed the subject. Asked if I wanted tea. I said no. I sat there for another hour pretending to be calm. Then I went to bed. The next day, I started looking through everything. Every piece of his digital life I could access. I had never gone through his stuff before. I always thought that was a line you don't cross unless you're already broken. But I needed to know. I didn't find much. His text history was wiped clean. No old messages. That alone was a red flag. Adam's the kind of guy who doesn't even delete spam emails. Why was everything wiped? But I got lucky. He had left his iPad synced to his iMessages. He didn't think I'd ever check it. He was wrong. The same night he'd been texting me, "Good night," while away on a business trip in Charlotte, he'd also sent Ray a photo of the view from his hotel room window with the message, "Wish you were here. I hate sleeping alone." They'd been messaging for months. I scrolled and scrolled. Dozens of messages. Some short, some long, some flirty, some angry, all of them intimate. They talked about me. She asked him if I suspected anything. He said I was too busy with the kids to care. That hurt more than anything else. I took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every photo. I emailed them to myself, then deleted the sent file. I covered my tracks. And then I waited. I needed to do this right. That weekend, I made dinner reservations at our favorite steakhouse. He was in a good mood. I acted normal. Let him talk about work, the kids, the new garage opener that wasn't working right. After the server took our order, I leaned forward and asked, calmly, "Would you ever cheat on me?" He laughed. Actually laughed. Said, "What? Are you serious?" "No, never." I smiled, took a sip of wine, pulled out my phone, and slid it across the table with the screenshots open. "Good," I said. "Because she seems to think you already are." He went completely still. Then his eyes dropped to the screen. He scrolled again, said nothing, just sat there. Finally, he said, "It's not what it looks like." I stared at him. That's all he had? Not what it looks like. He said she was just someone to talk to. That it wasn't physical. That he was lonely and didn't know how to talk to me anymore. I asked him how long it had been going on. He said, "Maybe 6 months." I said, "Try again." He admitted it started with flirting 9 months ago. Got more serious after a conference in Atlanta. I asked if they'd slept together. He didn't answer, which meant they had. He kept saying he didn't want to hurt me, that he loved me, that he just got lost. I told him to get lost for real then. He cried. He actually cried. I didn't. I just felt empty, numb, like someone took a bat to the life I thought I had and smashed it to pieces right in front of me. He moved into a hotel the next day, told the kids he was on a long work trip. I didn't correct him. I didn't have the strength to explain anything yet. That was 2 weeks ago. And now I'm sitting here, writing this, while the kids are at school and the house is quiet, and my whole life feels like it's cracked down the middle. I still haven't told my parents. I still haven't told the kids. I don't know what happens next. I just know nothing will ever be the same again. A week after he left, I finally sat the kids down. It was a Saturday morning. I made waffles like I always do. My daughter, who's 11, had her sketchbook in front of her, drawing dragons. My son, 9, was flipping through Pokemon cards. I waited until they were done eating. I sat across from them and just told the truth. I said, "Dad and I are taking a break. He did something that hurt me. I'm okay. You're safe. But things might be different for a while." My daughter immediately asked, "Did he cheat on you?" That hit me like a truck. She's 11. I just nodded. She pushed her plate away and went to her room. My son sat there for a second, then whispered, "Can I still play Minecraft with him on Tuesdays?" I said yes. I don't even know how I got through that conversation without breaking down. But I did. Somehow. The following Monday, I went into work like normal. I kept my head down. Didn't tell anyone. I work as an office manager at a dental clinic. The front desk girls could tell something was off. One of them asked me if everything was okay. I smiled and said, "Just tired." I was more than tired. I was drained. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I'd lost 10 pounds in 3 weeks. My body was running on coffee and anger. Then the twist came. Not from Adam. From Ray. She messaged me. She found me on Facebook. Sent me a request. I didn't accept it, but I could still read her message. It was short. "I'm sorry. I didn't know he was still with you. He told me you were separated." My hands started shaking. I screenshotted it. I didn't reply right away. I needed to breathe. This woman had been in my marriage. In my life. In my house, probably, in some way, virtually, emotionally, maybe physically too. And now she was in my inbox? I waited until that night to message her back. I just wrote, "How long has it been going on?" She replied in less than a minute. "Since last February." February. That's almost a full year. Not 6 months. Not flirty texts. Not a one-time slip. I asked her if they'd slept together. She wrote, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." Not a no. I asked if she ever came to our house. She said, "Once." He said you were at a retreat. I remember that weekend. A women's church retreat in Gatlinburg. I had felt so refreshed when I came back. The house was clean. The sheets were changed. Adam had been extra sweet that day. Now I know why. He was scrubbing her out of our bed. I didn't respond after that. I blocked her. But then something else happened. 2 days later, I'm leaving work and see a white SUV in the parking lot. I didn't think anything of it until I got in my car and it pulled up right beside me. It was Ray. She rolled down the window. I rolled mine up. She got out. She was younger than me. Probably mid-30s. Tall. Blonde. expensive jacket. Her makeup was perfect. I hated that I noticed. She stood there, not coming any closer, and said, "Please." I didn't know. I swear to God. He told me you'd moved out. I didn't say anything. She kept going. He said you left him. He said you were done. He never wore a ring around me. He said you wanted a divorce. I stared at her. And I said, "Then why were you hiding? Why didn't you add him on Facebook? Why didn't you post pictures?" She went quiet. That told me everything I needed to know. She knew. Maybe not at first. Maybe she really believed him at the beginning. But somewhere along the line, she knew. She kept going anyway. She said, "He lied to both of us." I said, "You don't get to come here and play the victim." Then I got in my car and left. That night, I confronted Adam. I told him Ray showed up. Told him she'd talked. He didn't even try to lie. He just sat on my front porch with his hands in his lap and whispered, "Ked everything up." I asked him why. Why throw away almost 2 decades? Why risk your kids? Why lie every single day? And he said something that made me feel physically sick. I liked how she made me feel. Like I wasn't a screw-up. I couldn't even yell. I just blinked at him. I said, "Then why didn't you just leave me first?" And he said, "Because I thought you'd be okay with it." That stopped me cold. "You thought I'd be okay with it?" He shook his head. "Not okay. I thought, maybe you'd look the other way. That you'd rather not know. So that was it." He thought I'd stay quiet. Like it was easier to keep the peace. Pretend it wasn't happening. Smile at dinners. Keep the schedule. Protect the image. He didn't just cheat. He bet on me staying silent. He lost. The next day, I called his mom. Yes, I went there. She and I had always been close. I wasn't calling to get her on my side. I just thought she deserved to know what kind of man she raised. She cried. Told me she was ashamed. Said if her late husband were still alive, he'd knock some sense into him. I didn't need her to take my side. But it felt good to hear someone say he was wrong. Later that night, I found out one more thing. He's still seeing Ray. Not kind of. Not trying to work things out. Still seeing her. They're just being more careful now. He thinks I don't know. But I do. I thought I had the full picture. I really did. Ray was the other woman. She came clean. I confronted him. I blew up my whole life. I was grieving something real, something terrible. But at least I thought it was done. The truth was out. I was wrong. It wasn't just Ray. 3 weeks after the porch confession, I got a DM on Instagram. From another woman. Different name. Different face. Different account. Her message said, "I'm so sorry to bother you. You don't know me, but I think I might have made a huge mistake." I didn't know he was married. I froze. I clicked on her profile. She looked even younger than Ray. Mid-20s, maybe. College-aged. Lots of pictures at concerts and breweries and hiking trails. Her bio said she was a physical therapy student at Lipscomb. I responded, "His name is Adam. He's 44. VP at a medical tech company. Married. 2 kids." She replied, "Oh my God. That's all. Just that." Then 5 minutes later, we met on Bumble. He said he was divorced. I thought something felt off. He was on dating apps. He was using a fake last name and a new phone number. He was actively dating while Ray was still around. While we were still in the same house. While our kids were still asking when daddy's coming back. This girl, her name's Maddie, ended up sending me screenshots. Conversations. Photos. Him shirtless. Him talking about his fresh start and how he was finally free. It was him. It was definitely him. Same voice. Same smirk. Same lies. He told her he had grown kids in college. Our kids are in elementary school. I asked her how long they'd been talking. She said since September. That was before I found Ray's message. He was seeing both of them at the same time. And sleeping in my bed. I swear to God, I sat on the floor of my closet and screamed into a towel for 5 full minutes. It was the kind of scream that came from somewhere I didn't even know existed inside me. I felt insane. I felt humiliated all over again. But I wasn't done. I kept digging. I checked our cell phone bill. Something I hadn't done in months. We were still on a joint plan. There it was, dozens of calls and texts to 2 different numbers that weren't saved in my phone. So I called both. One didn't pick up. The other did. Another woman. This one sounded older. I asked her how she knew Adam. She said, "Oh, from the gym." I asked if she knew he was married. She hung up. That's 3. 3 women that I know of. God knows how many there actually are. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't one bad decision. This was a pattern. This was a double life. And then came the worst twist of all. It wasn't about the cheating anymore. It was something I never expected. That Sunday, I was organizing paperwork for the lawyer. I had boxes full of bank statements, insurance policies, tax returns. All the boring crap you avoid until your life falls apart. That's when I noticed it. Our savings account, one we'd been building for 12 years, was drained. We'd had over $42,000 in it. All gone. Down to $1.38. I stared at the screen thinking it had to be a mistake. It wasn't. Transfers. Wire payments. ATM withdrawals. Mostly in the last 6 months. Thousands of dollars gone in random locations. Hotel charges. Uber rides. Jewelry. Flights. Vegas. He took it all. And I never saw it happening. I was working. Raising kids. Keeping the house together. Making sure they had Halloween costumes and matching socks. And while I was doing that, he was emptying our savings account to impress a 26-year-old at a bar in Henderson, Nevada. I called him. I didn't even wait. As soon as he answered, I said, "Where's the money, Adam?" He didn't even try to lie. He just said, "I messed up." I said, "Again? You messed up again?" He said, "I was going to pay it back." I asked him how. No answer. I told him I was done protecting him. That I'd be reporting everything to the lawyer. That I wasn't covering for him. Not in court. Not to his job. Not to his mother. Not to anyone. Then I asked him one final question. "Do our kids know who you are?" He went silent. I said, "Because I don't think I even do anymore." And I meant it. This man I married, the father of my children, the person I built an entire life with, he doesn't exist. I think he never did. It all came to a head on a Sunday in late March. The weather was nice. Too nice. One of those weird, early spring days in Tennessee where the sky's so blue it feels fake. The kids were outside with Tucker, tossing a ball around in the yard. I was inside, finishing up paperwork for the divorce lawyer. Adam was supposed to stop by to drop off some health insurance forms and say hi to the kids. He rang the doorbell like a stranger. When I opened the door, I immediately knew something was off. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. He looked exhausted. Or guilty. Maybe both. He said, "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, let him in. We sat at the kitchen table. Same spot where we'd shared 100 ordinary mornings, coffee, toast, backpacks, grocery lists. But this time, silence. He pulled a piece of paper from his jacket and slid it across the table. It was a paternity test. I stared at it, not understanding. He said quietly, "I needed to know. Ray, she's pregnant. Due in September." My mouth went dry. He kept going. "She told me 2 weeks ago. She said she wasn't sure, that it could be mine or someone else's. So I did the test." I blinked at him. I said, "And?" He nodded. "It's mine." My hands started shaking. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was. I grabbed the paper, crumpled it, threw it into the sink. He didn't flinch. I said, "You brought this into my house?" He said, "I thought you deserved to know the truth." I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. "You don't get to decide when I get the truth. You had 100 chances." He looked down. I wanted to scream. To throw something. To hit him. Instead, I just stood there, frozen. Then I heard the screen door open behind me. It was our daughter. She had come in to grab a juice box. She stopped, looking between us. She said, "Is everything okay?" Adam turned toward her, his voice shaking. "Yeah, sweetie. Everything's fine." She looked at me. Saw my face. She said, "Is this about that baby?" The room went dead quiet. He looked at me, confused. I said, "What did you just say?" She said, "I heard Daddy talking on the phone last week." I was in the hallway. He said something about Ray's baby and how he didn't want you to find out yet. Adam stood up. I stepped in between them. "You lied to her, too?" I said, my voice low, dangerous. "You used her silence like mine?" He said, "I didn't mean don't." I cut him off. "Don't say you didn't mean it. You meant every single part of this. The lying, the sneaking, the cheating, the stealing, the betrayal." He started crying. I didn't care. My daughter's face twisted. She ran out the back door. I heard her sob as the screen slammed behind her. Adam tried to go after her. I blocked the door. "No, you don't get to fix this. You don't get to comfort her like you're still a father she can trust." He stood there, speechless. And then came my mother. She pulled into the driveway without warning. She'd planned to visit the kids and drop off cookies. Southern mom move. She walked into the chaos like a storm catching the edge of another storm. She looked at me, then him. She said, "What did you do?" I said, "He got another woman pregnant." She turned to him, didn't even blink. "You always were a coward," she said. "I just didn't think you'd be this kind of coward." He muttered, "You don't know everything." She shot back, "I know enough." He walked out. Just like that. No goodbye. No apology. He couldn't face it. Couldn't face what he'd broken. I went upstairs and cried until I couldn't breathe. My son crawled into bed next to me that night and said, "Do we have to see him next weekend?" I didn't know how to answer. My daughter wouldn't speak to him for weeks. The divorce moved faster after that. Once the money stuff and the paternity test were filed, my lawyer came down on him like a hammer. I got primary custody, the house, and child support. He got visitation, supervised at first, by court order. He tried to act like the victim. Said I turned the kids against him. Said I was punishing him forever. I wasn't. I was just holding up a mirror. I'll be honest, there were nights I missed him. Not him, the man I ended up knowing, but the version I thought I married. The man who made me laugh when our daughter was born. Who stayed up with me when our son had the flu. Who kissed my forehead before work every morning. But that man wasn't real. He was a story I told myself. A version I edited in my head. A clean copy of a dirty draft. I learned that someone can love you in the way a child loves a toy, when it's easy, when it's shiny, when it makes them feel good. But when it stops working, they throw it away and reach for the next thing. I'm not a toy. I'm not disposable. I still don't know exactly who I am now. But I know who I'm not. I'm not the woman who looks the other way. I'm not the wife who pretends. I'm not the mother who lets her kids grow up thinking this is normal. I'm rebuilding. Slowly. Messily. But honestly. I don't know if love is waiting for me somewhere else. But I know I'll never accept less than I deserve again. Not for me. And not for them. You thought I'd look the other way, I told him. I'm looking now. And I see everything.